Fall in. What will you lack, sonny? What will you lack when the girls line up the street, shouting their love to the lads come back from the foe they rush to beat? Will you send a strangled cheer to the sky, and grin till your cheeks are red? But what will you lack when your mate goes by with a girl who cuts you dead? Where will you look, sonny? Where will you look when your children yet to be clamour to learn of the part you took in the war that kept men free? Will you say it was naught to you if France stood up to her foe or bunked? Or where will you look when they give you the glance that tells you they know you funked? How will you fare, sonny? How will you fare in the far-off winter night when you sit by the fire in an old man's chair and your neighbours talk of the fight? Will you slink away, as it were from a blow, your old head shamed and bent? Or say, I was not with the first to go, but I went. Thank God, I went. Why do they call, sonny? Why do they call for men who are brave and strong? Is it naught to you if your country fall, and right is smashed by wrong? Is it football still, and the picture show, the pub and the betting odds, when your brothers stand to the tyrant's blow, and Britain's call is God's?
The Two Mothers. Poor woman, weeping as they pass, yon brave recruits, the nation's pride. You mourn some gallant boy, alas, like mine, who lately fought and died. Kind stranger, not for soldier son, of shame, not grief, my heart will break. 3 stalwarts have I, but not one doth risk his life for England's sake. Who's for the game? Who's for the game, the biggest that's played, the red crashing game of a fight? Who'll grip and tackle the job unafraid, and who thinks he'd rather sit tight? Who'll toe the line for the signal to go? Who'll give his country a hand? Who wants a turn to himself in the show, and who wants a seat in the stand? Who knows it won't be a picnic, not much, yet eagerly shoulders a gun? Who would much rather come back with a crutch than lie low and be out of the fun? Come along, lads, but you'll come on all right, for there's only one course to pursue. Your country is up to her neck in a fight, and she's looking and calling for you.
Recruiting. Lads, you're wanted. Go and help. On the railway carriage wall stuck the poster, and I thought of the hands that penned the call. Fat civilians, wishing they could go and fight the Hun. Can't you see them thanking God that they're over 41? Girls with feathers, vulgar songs, washy verse on England's need. God, and don't we damn well know how the message ought to read? Lads, you're wanted. Over there, shiver in the morning dew, more poor devils like yourselves waiting to be killed by you. Go, and help to swell the names in the casualty lists. Help to make the columns stuff for the blasted journalists. Help to keep them nice and safe from the wicked German foe. Don't let him come over here. Lads, you're wanted. Out you go. There's a better word than that, lads. And can't you hear it come from a million men that call you to share their martyrdom? Leave the harlots still to sing comic songs about the Hun. Leave the fat old men to say, now we've got them on the run. Better 20 honest years than their dull 70. Lads, you're wanted. Come and learn to live and die with honest men. You shall learn what men can do, if you will but pay the price. Learn the gaiety and strength in the gallant sacrifice. Take your risk of life and death underneath the open sky. Live clean or go out quick. Lads, you're wanted. Come and die. The volunteer. Here lies a clerk, who half his life had spent toiling at ledgers in a city grey. Thinking, that so his days would drift away with no lance broken in life's tournament. Yet ever twixt the books and his bright eyes the gleaming eagles of the legions came, and horsemen, charging on the phantom skies, went thundering past beneath the oriflamme. And now those waiting dreams are satisfied. From twilight to the halls of dawn he went. His lance is broken, but he lies content with that high hour in which he lived and died. And falling thus he wants no recompense, who found his battle in the last resort. Nor need he any hearse to bear him hence, who goes to join the men of Agincourt. Peace. Now God be thanked, who has matched us with his hour, and caught our youth, and wakened us from sleeping, with hand made sure, clear eye, and sharpened powder, to turn as swimmers into cleanness leaping. Glad from a world grown old, and cold, and weary, leave the sick hearts that honour could not move, and half men, and their dirty songs and dreary, and all the little emptiness of love. Oh, we who have known shame, we have found release there, where there's no ill, no grief, but sleep has mending. Naught broken save this body, lost but breath. Nothing to shake the laughing heart's long peace there, but only agony, and that has ending. And the worst friend and enemy is but death.
To the others. This was the gleam then that lured from far your son and my son to the holy war. Your son and my son for the accolade, with the banner of Christ over them, in steel arrayed. All quiet roads of life ran on to this, when they were little for their mother's kiss. Little feet hastening so soft, unworn, to the vows and the vigil and the road of thorn. Your son and my son, the downy things, sheltered in mother's breast by mother's wings. Should they be broken in the Lord's wars, peace, he who has given them, are they not his? Dreams of knight's armour and the battle shout, fighting and falling at the last redoubt, dreams of long dying on the field of slain. This was the dream that lured, nor lured in vain. These were the voices they heard from far, bugles and trumpets of the holy war. Your son and my son have heard the call. Your son and my son have stormed the wall. Your son and my son, clean as new swords. Your man and my man, and now the Lord's. Your son and my son, for the great crusade, with the banner of Christ over them, our knights, new made.
In Flanders fields. In Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. For the Fallen, September 1914. With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free. Solemn the drums thrill. Death, august and royal, sings sorrow up into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of desolation, and a glory that shines upon our tears. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. They mingle not with their laughing comrades again. They sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime. They sleep beyond England's foam. But where our desires are, and our hopes profound, felt as a wellspring that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of their own land, they are known, as the stars are known to the night. As the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches upon the heavenly plain. As the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end, they remain. Dawn on the Somme. Last night rain fell over the scarred plateau, and now from the dark horizon dazzling flies arrow on fire-plumed arrow to the skies, shot from the bright arc of Apollo's bow. And from the wild and writhen waste below, from flashing pools and mounds lit one by one, or is it mist? Or are these companies of mourning heroes who arise with thrusting arms, with limbs and hair aglow, toward the risen God, upon whose brow burns the gold laurel of all victories, hero and hero's God, the invincible sun.
From Summer in England, 1914. On London fell a clearer light. Caressing pencils of the sun defined the distances. The white houses transfigured one by one. The long, unlovely street impearled. Oh, what a sky has walked the world. Most happy year, and out of town the hay was prosperous and the wheat. The silken harvest climbed the down. Moon after moon was heavenly sweet, stroking the bread within the sheaves, looking twixt apples and their leaves. And while this rose made round her cup, the armies died convulsed. And when this chaste young silver sun went up softly, 1,000 shattered men, one wet corruption heaped the plain after a league-long throb of pain. Flower following tender flower, and birds and berries and benignant skies made thrive the serried flocks and herds. Yonder are men shot through the eyes. Love, hide thy face from man's unpardonable race.
The dead Boche. To you who'd read my songs of war and only hear of blood and fame, I'll say, you've heard it said before, war's hell. And if you doubt the same, today I found in Mamet's wood a certain cure for lust of blood, where, propped against a shattered trunk, in a great mess of things unclean, sat a dead Boche. He scowled and stunk, with clothes and face a sodden green, big-bellied, spectacled, crop-haired, dribbling black blood from nose and beard.
He went for a soldier. He marched away with a blithe young score of him, with the first volunteers, clear-eyed and clean and sound to the core of him, blushing under the cheers. There were fine new flags that swung a-flying there. Oh, the pretty girls he glimpsed a-crying there, pelting him with pinks and roses. Billy, the soldier boy. Not very clear in the kind young heart of him what the fuss was about, but the flowers and the flags seemed part of him. The music drowned his doubt. It's a fine, brave sight they were a-comin' there. To the gay, bold tune they kept a-drumming there, while the boasting fifes shrilled jauntily. Billy, the soldier boy. Soon he has won with the blinding smoke of it, volley and curse and groan. Then he has done with the nightly joke of it, its rending flesh and bone. There are pain-crazed animals a-shrieking there, and a warm blood stench that is a-reeking there. He fights like a rat in a corner. Billy, the soldier boy. There he lies now, like a ghoulish score of him left on the field for dead. The ground all around is smeared with the gore of him, even the leaves are red. The thing that was Billy lies a-dying there, writhing and a-twisting and a-crying there. A sickening sun grins down on him, Billy, the soldier boy. Still not quite clear in the poor wrung heart of him what the fuss was about. See where he lies, or a ghastly part of him, while life is oozing out. There are loathsome things he sees a-crawling there. There are hoarse-voiced crows he hears a-calling there, eager for the foul feast spread for them. Billy, the soldier boy.
God, how I hate you. God, how I hate you. You young, cheerful men whose pious poetry blossoms on your graves as soon as you are in them. Hark, how one chants, "Oh, happy to have lived these epic days." These epic days? And he'd been to France, and seen the trenches, glimpsed the huddled dead in the periscope, hung on the rusty wire, choked by their sickly fetor, day and night blown down his throat, stumbled through ruined heaths, proved that all that muddy brown monotony where blood's the only coloured thing. Perhaps he'd seen a man killed, a sentry shot at night, hunched as he fell, his feet on the firing step, his neck against the back slope of the trench, and the rest doubled between, his head smashed like an eggshell, and the warm grey brain spattered all bloody on the parados. Yet still God's in his heaven. All is right in this best possible of worlds. From the other side. About your book. I've read it carefully. So has McFadden. You remember him, the light-haired chap who joined us after Luce. And, candidly, we don't think much of it. The piece about the horses isn't bad, but all the rest, excuse the word, are tripe. The same old tripe we've read 1,000 times. My grief, but we're fed up to the back teeth with war books. War verse, all the eyewash stuff that seems to please the idiots at home. You know the kind of thing, or used to know. Heroes who laugh while Fritz is strafing them. I don't remember that you found it fun, the day they shelled us out of Blauport Farm. After the fight, our cheery wounded, note the smile of victory, it won't come off. Of course they smile. So do you if you'd escaped and saw 3 months of hospital ahead. They don't smile much when they're shipped back to France. But what's the good of war books if they fail to give civilian readers an idea of what life is like in the firing line? You might have done that much. From you, at least, I thought we'd get an inkling of the truth. But no, you rant and rattle, beat your drum, and blow your tuppenny trumpet like the rest. Red battle's glory, honour's utmost task, gay jesting faces of undaunted boys. The same old boy's own paper balderdash. Hang it, you can't have clean forgotten things you went to bed with, woke with, smelt and felt. All those long months of boredom streaked with fear. Mud, cold, fatigue, sweat, nerve strain, sleeplessness, and men's excreta viscid in the rain, and stiff-legged horses lying by the road, their bloated bellies shimmering green with flies. You have forgotten. Or you couldn't write this sort of stuff, all cant. No guts in it. Hardly a single picture true to life. Well, here's a picture for you. Montauban. Last year. The flattened village on our left. On our right flank, the raised briqueterie. Their 5.9s pounding bits to dustier bits. Behind, a cratered slope with batteries crashing and flashing, violet in the dusk, and prematuring every now and then, in front, the ragged Bois de Benefet. Bosch whiz-bangs bursting white among its trees. You'd been doing FOO that day. The staff knows why we had an FOO. One couldn't flag-wag through Trone's Wood. The wires went down as fast as one could put them up, and messages by runner took 3 hours. I'd got the wind up, rather. You were late, and they'd been shelling like the very deuce. However, back you came. I see you now, staggering into mess, a broken trench, 2 chalk walls roofed with corrugated iron, and round the traverse driver Noakes's stove, stinking and smoking while we ate our grub. Your face was blue-white, streaked with dirt. Your eyes had shrunk into your head. As though afraid to watch more horrors, you were sodden wet with greasy coal-black mud and other things. Sweating, shivering, speechless, there you stood. I gave you whiskey, made you talk. You said, "Major, another signaler's been killed." Who? Gunner Andrews, blast them, oh my Christ. His head split open when his brains oozed out. They looked like bloody sweetbreads in the muck. And you're the chap who writes this claptrap verse? Lord, if I'd half your brains, I'd write a book. None of your sentimental platitudes, but something real, vital, that should strip the glamour from this outrage we call war, showing it naked, hideous, stupid, vile, one vast abomination, so that they who, coming after till the ransomed fields where our lean corpses rotted in the ooze, reading my written words should understand this stark, stupendous horror, visualize the unutterable foulness of it all. I'd show them, not your glamorous, glorious game which men play jesting for their honour's sake, a kind of military tournament with just a hint of danger bound in cloth, but war, as war is now and always was, a dirty, loathsome, servile murder job. Men, lousy, sleepless, ulcerous, afraid, toiling their hearts out in the pulling slime that wrenches gumboots down from bleeding heel and cakes in itching armpits, navel, ears. Men stunned to brainlessness and gibbering. Men driving men to death and worse than death. Men maimed and blinded, men against machines, flesh versus iron, concrete, flame and wire, men choking out their souls in poison gas. Men squelched into the slime by trampling feet. Men disemboweled by guns 5 miles away, cursing with their last breath the living God because he made them in his image. Men. So, were your talent mine, I'd write of war for those who, coming after, know it not. From Counter-Attack. We'd gained our first objective hours before, while dawn broke like a face with blinking eyes, pallid, unshaved and thirsty, blind with smoke. Things seemed all right at first. We held their line with bombers posted, Lewis guns well placed, and clink of shovels deepening the shallow trench. The place was rotten with dead. Green, clumsy legs, high-booted, sprawled and grovelled among the saps and trunks face downward in the sucking mud, wallowed like trodden sandbags loosely filled, and naked sodden buttocks, mats of hair, bulged, clotted heads slept in the plastering slime. And then the rain began. The jolly old rain. Comrades, an episode. Before he was aware the very light had risen. On the air it hung glistering, and he could not stay his hand from moving to the barbed wire's broken strand. A rifle cracked. He fell. Night waned. He was alone. A heavy shell whispered itself passing high, high overhead. His wound was wet to his hand, but still it bled onto the glimmering ground. Then with a slow, vain smile his wound he bound, knowing, of course, he'd not see home again. Home whose thought he put away. His men whispered, "Where's Mr. Gates?" "Out on the wire." "I'll get him," said one. Dawn blinked, and the fire of the Germans heaved up and down the line. "Stand to." "Too late, I'll get him." "Oh, the swine." "When we might get him in yet safe and whole. Corporal didn't see him fall out on patrol, or he'd have gotten." "Shh, no talking there." A whisper. "I went down at the last flare." Meanwhile the Maxims, tock, 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 their swish of bullets told death lurked against the wish. No hope for him. His corporal, as one shamed, vainly and helplessly his ill luck blamed. Then Gates slowly saw the morn break in a rosy peace through the lone thorn by which he lay, and felt the dawn wind pass whispering through the pallid stalky grass of no man's land. And the tears came scaldingly sweet, more lovely than a flame. He closed his eyes. He thought of home and grit his teeth. He knew no help could come. The silent sun over the earth held sway. Occasional rifles cracked, and far away a heedless speck, a plane, slid on alone, like a fly traversing a cliff of stone. "I must get back," said Gates aloud, and heaved at his body. But it lay bereaved of any power. He could not wait till night, and he lay still. Blood swam across his sight. Then with a groan, "No luck ever. Well, I must die alone." Occasional rifles cracked. A cloud that shone gold-rimmed blackened the sun and then was gone. The sun still smiled. The grass sang in its play. Someone whistled, over the hills and far away. Gates watched silently the swift, swift sun, burning his life before it was begun. Suddenly he heard Corporal Timmins' voice. "Now then, hurry up with that tea." "Aye, Ginger. Bill." His men. Timmins and Jones and Wilkinson. Bard. And Hughes and Simpson. It was hard not to see them. Wilkinson, stubby, grim, with his "No, sir, yes, sir," and the slim Simpson, "Indeed, sir?" while it seemed he winked because his smiling left eye always blinked. And Corporal Timmins, straight and blond and wise, with his quiet, scanning, level hazel eyes, and all the others, tunics that didn't fit, a dozen different sorts of eyes. Oh, it was hard to lie there. Yet he must. But no. I've got to die. I'll get to them. I'll go. Inch by inch, he fought, breathless and mute, dragging his carcass like a famished brute. His head was hammering and his eyes were dim. A bloody sweat seemed to ooze out of him and freeze along his spine. Then he'd lie still before another effort of his will took him one nearer yard. The parapet was reached. He could not rise to it. A lookout screeched, "Mr. Gates!" 3 figures in one breath leapt up. 2 figures fell in toppling death, and Gates was lifted in. "Who's hit?" said he. "Timmins and Jones." "Why did they that for me? I'm gone already." Gently they laid him prone and silently watched. He twitched. They heard him moan, "Why for me?" His eyes roamed round, and none replied. "I see it was alone I should have died." They shook their heads. Then, "Is the doctor here?" "He's coming, sir. He's hurrying, no fear." "No good. Lift me." They lifted him. He smiled and held his arms out to the dim, and in a moment passed beyond their ken, hearing him whisper, "Oh, my men, my men." Spring offensive. Halted against the shade of a last hill, they fed, and eased of packloads were at ease, and leaning on the nearest chest or knees carelessly slept. But many there stood still to face the stark blank sky beyond the ridge, knowing their feet had come to the end of the world. Marvelling, they stood and watched the long grass swirled by the May breeze, murmurous with wasp and midge. And though the summer oozed into their veins like an injected drug for their bodies' pains, sharp on their souls hung the imminent ridge of grass. Fearfully flashed the sky's mysterious glass. Hour after hour they ponder the warm field and the far valley behind, where buttercups had blessed with gold their slow boots coming up, when even the little brambles would not yield but clutched and clung to them like sorrowing arms. They breathed like trees unstirred, till like a cold gust thrills the little word at which each body and its soul begird and tighten them for battle. No alarms of bugles, no high flags, no clamorous haste, only a lift and flare of eyes that face the sun like a friend with whom their love is done. Oh, larger shone that smile against the sun, mightier than his whose bounty these have spurned. So, soon they topped the hill, and raced together over an open stretch of herb and heather exposed. And instantly the whole sky burned with fury against them. Earth set sudden cups in thousands for their blood, and the green slope chasmed and deepened sheer to infinite space. Of them who running on that last high place breasted the surf of bullets, or went up on the hot blast and fury of hell's upsurge, or plunged and fell away past this world's verge, some say God caught them, even before they fell. But what say such as from existence brink ventured but drave too swift to sink? The few, who rushed in the body to enter hell, and there out-fiending all its fiends and flames with superhuman inhumanities, long famous glories, immemorial shames, and crawling slowly back, have by degrees regained cool, peaceful air in wonder. Why speak not they of comrades that went under? Into battle. The naked earth is warm with spring, and with green grass and bursting trees leans to the sun's gaze, glorying, and quivers in the sunny breeze. And life is colour and warmth and light, and a striving evermore for these. And he is dead who will not fight, and who dies fighting has increase. The fighting man shall from the sun take warmth, and life from the glowing earth, speed with the light-foot winds to run, and with the trees to newer birth, and find when fighting shall be done great rest and fullness after dearth. All the bright company of heaven hold him in their high comradeship, the dog star and the sisters seven, Orion's belt and sordid hip. The woodland trees that stand together, they stand to him, each one a friend. They gently speak in the windy weather, they guide to valley and ridge's end. The kestrel, hovering by day, and the little owls that call by night bid him be swift and keen as they, as keen of ear and swift of sight. The blackbird sings to him, "Brother, brother, if this be the last song you shall sing, sing well, for you may not sing another. Brother, sing." In dreary, doubtful waiting hours, before the brazen frenzy starts, the horses show him nobler powers. O patient eyes, courageous hearts. And when the burning moment breaks, and all things else are out of mind, and only joy of battle takes him by the throat and makes him blind, through joy and blindness he shall know, not caring much to know, that still nor lead nor steel shall reach him, so that it be not the destined will. The thundering line of battle stands, and in the air death moans and sings. But day shall clasp him with strong hands, and night shall fold him in soft wings. War Poems, read by Paul McGann and Regine Candler.
From all is vanity. And now the ambitious youth disdains the safe but harder labours of the gown, the softer pleasures of the courtly town, the once loved rural sports and chases of the plains. Does with the soldier's life the garb assume the gold embroideries and the graceful plume? Walks haughty in a coat of scarlet dye, a colour well contrived to cheat the eye. Where richer blood, alas, may indistinguished lie. And oh, too near that wretched fate attend, hear it, ye parents, all ye weeping friends. Thou fonder maid, won by those gaudy charms, the destined prize of his victorious arms, now fainting, die upon the mournful sound that speaks his hasty death and paints the fatal wound. Trail all your pikes, dispirit every drum, march in a slow procession from afar. Be silent, ye dejected men of war. Be still the hautboys, and the flute be dumb. Display no more in vain the lofty banner, for see, where on the bier before ye lies the pale, the fallen, the untimely sacrifice to your mistaken shrine, to your false idol, honor.
On the idle hill. On the idle hill of summer, sleepy with the flow of streams, far I hear the steady drummer drumming like a noise in dreams. Far and near and low and louder, on the roads of earth go by, dear to friends and food for powder, soldiers marching, all to die. East and west on fields forgotten, bleach the bones of comrades slain. Lovely lads and dead and rotten, none that go return again. Far the calling bugles hollow, high the screaming fife replies, gay the files of scarlet follow. Woman bore me, I will rise.
For two voices. Oh, mother, mother, isn't it fun? The soldiers marching past in the sun. Child, child, what are you saying? Come to church, we should be praying. Look, mother, at their bright spears. The leaves are falling like women's tears. You are not looking at what I see. Nay, but I look at what must be. Hark to the pipers, see the flags flying. I hear the sound of a girl crying. How many hundreds before they are done? How many mothers wanting a son? Here rides the general, pacing slow. Well, he may, if he knows what I know. Oh, this war, what a glorious game. Sin and shame, sin and shame.
The drum. I hate that drum's discordant sound, parading round and round and round. To thoughtless youth it pleasure yields and lures from cities and from fields, to sell their liberty for charms of tawdry lace and glittering arms. And when ambition's voice commands to march and fight and fall in foreign lands, I hate that drum's discordant sound, parading round and round and round. To me it talks of ravaged plains, and burning towns, and ruined swains, and mangled limbs, and dying groans, and widows' tears, and orphans' moans, and all that misery's hand bestows, to fill the catalogue of human woes. The Battle of Blenheim. It was a summer evening. Old Caspar's work was done, and he before his cottage door was sitting in the sun. And by him sported on the green his little grandchild, Wilhelmine. She saw her brother Peterkin roll something large and round which he beside the rivulet in playing there had found. He came to ask what he had found that was so large and smooth and round. Old Caspar took it from the boy, who stood expectant by, and when the old man shook his head, and with a natural sigh, "'Tis some poor fellow's skull," said he, "who fell in the great victory. I find them in the garden, for there's many here about, and often when I go to plough, the ploughshare turns them out. For many thousand men," said he, "was slain in that great victory." "Now tell us what 'twas all about, young Peterkin," he cries. And little Wilhelmine looks up with wonder-waiting eyes. "Now tell us all about the war and what they fought each other for." "It was the English," Caspar cried, "who put the French to rout. But what they fought each other for I could not well make out. But everybody said," quoth he, "that 'twas a famous victory. My father lived at Blenheim then, yon little stream hard by. They burnt his dwelling to the ground, and he was forced to fly. So with his wife and child he fled, nor had he where to rest his head. With fire and sword the country round was wasted far and wide, and many a childing mother then and newborn baby died. But things like that, you know, must be at every famous victory. They say it was a shocking sight. After the field was won, for many thousand bodies here lay rotting in the sun. But things like that, you know, must be after a famous victory. Great praise the Duke of Marlborough won, and our good Prince Eugene." "Why, 'twas a very wicked thing," said little Wilhelmine. "Nay, nay, my little girl," quoth he, "it was a famous victory. And everybody praised the Duke, who this great fight did win." "But what good came of it at last?" quoth little Peterkin. "Why, that I cannot tell," said he, "but 'twas a famous victory."
On reading the account of the Battle of Waterloo, oh, who can listen with delight to tales of battles won, and who can hear without a fright the news of war begun? Oh, when the glory does their hearts inspire, did they reflect what woes some bosom fire? Oh, did their thought fly to the battle plain, and mark the writhing agony and pain, and hear the cries, and see the bleeding slain? Ah, sure no more their hearts with joy would bound, but shrink in horror from the victory's sound. While through the streets the news of conquest spread, each parent listens with consuming dread. Though shouts of triumph breathe from every tongue, some anxious heart with agony has wrung. The meanest soldier sunk to death's repose has caused some breast to feel affliction's throes. How can they bear each joyful shout to hear, which still renews remembrances so dear? O long may battle's terrors cease, be war and vengeance fled, that Europe, wrapped in lasting peace, may rest her laurelled head.
From Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. There was a sound of revelry by night, and Belgium's capital had gathered then her beauty and her chivalry, and bright the lamp shone o'er fair women and brave men. 1,000 hearts beat happily, and when music arose with its voluptuous swell, soft eyes looked love to eyes which spake again, and all went merry as a marriage bell. But hush! Hark! A deep sound strikes like a rising knell. Did ye not hear it? No, 'twas but the wind, or the car rattling o'er the stony street. On with the dance, let joy be unconfined. No sleep till morn, when youth and pleasure meet to chase the glowing hours with flying feet. But hark! That heavy sound breaks in once more, as if the clouds its echo would repeat, and nearer, clearer, deadlier than before. Arm! Arm, it is the cannon's opening roar. Within a windowed niche of that high hall sat Brunswick's fated chieftain. He did hear that sound the first amidst the festival, and caught its tone with death's prophetic ear. And when they smiled because he deemed it near, his heart more truly knew that peal too well, which stretched his father on a bloody bier, and roused the vengeance blood alone could quell. He rushed into the field, and foremost fighting, fell. Then and there was hurrying to and fro, and gathering tears and tremblings of distress, and cheeks all pale, which but an hour ago blushed at the praise of their own loveliness. And there were sudden partings, such as pressed the life from out young hearts, and choking sighs which ne'er might be repeated. Who could guess if ever more should meet those mutual eyes, since upon nights so sweet such awful mourn could rise? And there was mounting in hot haste the steed, the mustering squadron and the clattering car went pouring forward with impetuous speed, and swiftly forming in the ranks of war. And the deep thunder peal upon peal, afar and near, the beat of the alarming drum roused up the soldier ere the morning star, while thronged the citizens with terror dumb, or whispering with white lips, "The foe! They come! They come!" Before Waterloo, the last night. And night, and muffled creakings and the wheels of the artillery wagons circling with the clock. Blücher's Prussian army passing the estate. The man plays the harpsichord and lifts his eyes, playing each air by ear to look at her. He might be looking in a mirror for himself, a mirror filled with his young face. The sorrow his music made seductive and beautiful. Suddenly everything is over. Instead, wearily by an open window, she stands and clasps the helpless thumping of her heart. No sound. Outside, a fresh morning wind has risen, and strangely foreign on the mirror table leans his black shako with its white death's head.
Couplet. Come, cheer up, my lads, 'tis to glory we steer, as the soldier remarked, whose post lay in the rear.
The charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. All in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell, all that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honour the charge they made. Honour the Light Brigade. Noble 600.
The recruited collier. Oh, what's the matter with you, my lass? And where's your dashing Jimmy? The soldier boys have picked him up and sent him far, far frae me. Last payday he set off to town, and them red-coated fellows enticed him in and made him drunk, and he'd better gone to the gallows. The very sight of his cockade, it set us all a-crying, and me, I fairly fainted twice. I thought that I was dying. My father would have paid the smart and run for the golden guinea, but the sergeant swore he'd kiss the book, and now they've got young Jimmy. When Jimmy talks about the wars, it's worse than death to hear him. I must go out and hide my tears, because I cannot bear him. For aye, he jibes and cracks his jokes, and bids me not forsake him. A brigadier or grenadier, he says they're sure to make him. As I walked out over the stubble field, below it runs the seam. I thought of Jimmy hewing there, but it was all a dream. He hewed the very coals we burn, and when the fire I's leetin', to think the lumps was in his hands, it sets my heart to beatin'. So break my heart, and then it's o'er. So break my heart, my dearie, and I'll lie in the cold, cold grave, for of single life I'm weary. Come up from the fields, father. Come up from the fields, father, here's a letter from our Pete. And come to the front door, mother, here's a letter from thy dear son. Lo, 'tis autumn. Lo were the trees, deeper green, yellower and redder, cool and sweeten Ohio's villages, with leaves fluttering in the moderate wind. Where apples ripe in the orchards hang, and grapes on the trellis vines. Smell you the smell of the grapes on the vines? Smell you the buckwheat where the bees were lately buzzing? Above all, lo, the skies so calm, so transparent after the rain, and with wondrous clouds. Below, too, all calm, all vital and beautiful, and the farm prospers well. Down in the fields, all prospers well. But now from the fields, "Come, father, come at the daughter's call. And come to the entry, mother, to the front door, come right away." Fast as she can, she hurries, something ominous, her steps trembling. She does not tarry to smooth her hair nor adjust her cap. Open the envelope quickly. Oh, this is not our son's writing, yet his name is signed. Oh, a strange hand writes for our dear son. Oh, stricken mother's soul. All swims before her eyes, flashes with black. She catches the main words only. Sentences broken. Gunshot wound in the breast. Cavalry skirmish. Taken to hospital. At present low, but will soon be better. Ah, now the single figure to me, amid all teeming and wealthy Ohio with all its cities and farms, sickly white in the face and dull in the head, very faint by the jamb of a door leans. "Grieve not so, dear mother," the just-grown daughter speaks through her sobs. The little sisters huddle around, speechless and dismayed. "See, dearest mother, the letter says Pete will soon be better." Alas, poor boy, he will never be better, nor maybe needs to be better, that brave and simple soul. While they stand at home at the door, he is dead already. The only son is dead. But the mother needs to be better. She with thin form presently dressed in black. By day her meals untouched, then at night fitfully sleeping, often waking. In the midnight, waking, weeping, longing with one deep longing, oh, that she might withdraw unnoticed, silent from life, escape and withdraw, to follow, to seek, to be with her dear dead son. What the Bullet Sang. O joy of creation, to be! O rapture to fly and be free! Be the battle lost or won, though its smoke shall hide the sun, I shall find my love, the one born for me. I shall know him where he stands, all alone, with a power in his hands not o'erthrown. I shall know him by his face, by his godlike front and grace. I shall hold him for a space, all my own. It is he, O my love, so bold. It is I, all thy love, foretold. It is I, O love, what bliss! Dost thou answer to my kiss? O sweetheart, what is this? Lieth there so cold?
Vitae Lampida. There's a breathless hush in the close tonight. 10 to make and a match to win. A bumping pitch and a blinding light. An hour to play and the last man in. And it's not for the sake of a ribboned coat, or the selfish hope of a season's fame, but his captain's hand on his shoulder smote. Play up and play the game. The sand of the desert is sodden red, red with the wreck of a square that broke. The Gatling's jammed and the colonel dead, and the regiment blind with dust and smoke. The river of death has brimmed its banks, and England's far, and honour a name. But the voice of a schoolboy rallies the ranks. Play up and play the game. This is the word that year by year, while in her place the school is set, every one of her sons must hear, and none that hears it dare forget. This they all with a joyful mind beat through life like a torch in flame, and, falling, fling to the host behind. Play up, and play the game. Drummer Hodge. They throw in Drummer Hodge, the rest uncoffined, just as found. His landmark is a coppier crest that breaks the veldt around, and foreign constellations west each night above his mound. Young Hodge, the drummer, never knew, fresh from his Wessex home, the meaning of the broad Carew, the bush, the dusty loam, and why uprose to nightly view strange stars amid the gloam. Yet portion of that unknown plain will Hodge for ever be. His homely northern breast and brain grow to some southern tree, and strange-eyed constellations reign his stars eternally. Vox Militantis. On the wide veldt, beneath the vaster sky, the graves of battling Boer and Briton lie. By day the sunlight watches o'er their sleep, by night the stars their solemn vigil keep. Cold, calm, and brilliant from that awful height, they ask, were ye so weary of the light? Ours the slow eons, yours the flying day, why reckless fling its noon and eve away? And lo, the answer, nay, but life was sweet, death the grim horror that we loathe to meet, but duty spurred us to the foremost place, and honour beckoned with shining face. A wife in London. She sits in the tawny vapour that the Thames-side lanes have uprolled, behind whose webby fold unfold like a waning taper the street lamp glimmers cold. A messenger's knock cracks smartly. Flashed news is in her hand, of meaning it dazes to understand, though shaped so shortly. He has fallen in the far southland. 'Tis the morrow, the fog hangs thicker, the postman nears and goes. A letter is brought whose lines disclose by the firelight flicker his hand, whom the worm now knows. Fresh, firm, penned in highest feather, page full of his hoped return, and of home-planned jaunts by break and burn in the summer weather, and of new love that they would learn. War. A tent that is pitched at the base, a wagon that comes from the night, a stretcher, and on it a case, a surgeon who's holding a light, the infantry's bearing the brunt. Oh, hark to the wind-carried cheer. A mutter of guns at the front, a whimper of sobs at the rear. And it's war. Orderly, hold the light, you can lay him down on the table. So, easily, gently. Thanks, you may go. And it's war, at the part that is not for show. A tent with a table athwart, a table that's laid out for one, a waterproof cover, and naught but the limp, mangled work of a gun. A bottle that's stuck by the pole, a guttering dip in its neck, the flickering light of a soul on the wandering eyes of the wreck. And it's war. Orderly, hold his hand. I'm not going to hurt you, so don't be afraid. A ricochet, God, what a mess it has made. And it's war, and a very unhealthy trade. The clink of a stopper and glass, a sigh as the chloroform drips. A trickle of what? On the grass, and bluer the lips. The lashes have hidden the stare. A rent, and the clothes fall away. A touch, and the wound is laid bare. A cut, and the face has turned grey. And it's war. Orderly, take it out. It's hard for his child, and it's rough on his wife. There might have been, sooner, a chance for his life, but it's war. And orderly, clean this knife. Dirge of the Dead Sisters. Who recalls the twilight and the ranged tents in order, violet peaks uplifted through the crystal evening air, and the clink of iron teacups and the piteous noble laughter, and the faces of the sisters with the dust upon their hair? Who recalls the noontide and the funerals through the market, blanket-hidden bodies, flagless, followed by the flies, and the footsore firing party, and the dust and stench and staleness, and the faces of the sisters, and the glory in their eyes? Bold behind the battle, in the open camp all hallowed, patient, wise and mirthful in the ringed and reeking town. These endured, unresting, till they rested from their labours. Little wasted bodies. Ah, so light to lower down. The hyenas. After the burial parties leave, and the baffled kites have fled, the wise hyenas come out at eve to take account of our dead. How he died, and why he died, troubles them not a whit. They snout the bushes and stones aside, and dig till they come to it. They are only resolute they shall eat, that they and their mates may thrive, and they know the dead are safer meat than the weakest thing alive. For a goat may butt, and a worm may sting, and a child will sometimes stand. But a poor dead soldier of the king can never lift a hand. They whoop and halloo and scatter the dirt until their tushes white take good hold in the army shirt and tug the corpse to light. And the pitiful face is shown again, for an instant ere they close. But it is not discovered to living men, only to God and to those who, being soulless, are free from shame, whatever meat they may find. Nor do they defile the dead man's name. That is reserved for his kind. Channel firing. That night your great guns, unawares, shook all our coffins as we lay, and broke the chancel window squares. We thought it was the judgment day, and sat upright. While drearisome arose the howl of wakened hounds. The mouse let fall the altar crumb, the worms drew back into the mounds. The glebe cow drooled, till God called, "No, it's gunnery practice out at sea, just as before you went below. The world is as it used to be. All nations striving strong to make red war yet redder. Mad as hatters, they do no more for Christ's sake than you who are helpless in such matters. But this is not the judgment hour. For some of them's a blessed thing. For if it were, they'd have to scour hell's floor for so much threatening. Ha! Ha! It will be warmer when I blow the trumpet, if indeed I ever do, for you are men, and rest eternal sorely need." So down we lay again. "I wonder will the world ever saner be," said one, "than when he sent us under in our indifferent century?" And many a skeleton shook his head. "Instead of preaching 40 year," my neighbour parson thirdly said, "I wish I had stuck to pipes and beer." Again the guns disturbed the hour, roaring their readiness to avenge, as far inland as Stourton Tower, and Camelot, and starlit Stonehenge. Exposure. Our brains ache in the merciless iced east winds that knife us. Wearied we keep awake because the night is silent. Low, drooping flares confuse our memory of the salient. Worried by silence, sentries whisper, curious, nervous. But nothing happens. Watching, we hear the mad gusts tugging on the wire, like twitching agonies of men among its brambles. Northward, incessantly the flickering gunnery rumbles, far off like a dull rumour of some other war. What are we doing here? The poignant misery of dawn begins to grow. We only know war lasts, rain soaks, and clouds sag stormy. Dawn massing in the east, a melancholy army attacks once more in ranks on shivering ranks of grey. But nothing happens. Sudden successive flights of bullets streak the silence, less deathly than the air that shudders black with snow. With sidelong flowing flakes that flock, pause, and renew, we watch them wandering up and down the wind's nonchalance. But nothing happens. Pale flakes with fingering stealth come feeling for our faces. We cringe in holes, back on forgotten dreams, and stare, snow-dazed, deep in grassier ditches. So we drowse, sun-dozed, littered with blossoms trickling where the blackbird fusses. Is it that we are dying? Slowly our ghosts drag home, glimpsing the sunk fires, glozed with crusted dark red jewels. Crickets jingle there. For hours the innocent mice rejoice. The house is theirs, shutters and doors all closed. On us the doors are closed. We turn our back to our dying. Since we believe not otherwise can kind fires burn, nor ever suns smile true on child or field or fruit. For God's invincible spring our love is made afraid. Therefore, not loathed, we lie out here. Therefore we're born, for love of God seems dying. Tonight this frost will fasten on this mud and us, shrivelling many hands, puckering foreheads crisp. The burying party, picks and shovels in shaking grasp, pours over half-known faces. All their eyes are ice. But nothing happens. Winter Warfare. Colonel Cold strode up the line, tabs of rime and spurs of ice, stiffened all where he did glare, horses, men, and lice. Visited a forward post, left them burning ear to foot, fingers stuck to biting steel, toes to frozen boot. Stalked on into no man's land, turned the wire to fleecy wool, iron stakes to sugar sticks, snapping at a pull. Those who watched with hoary eyes saw two figures gleaming there. Hauptmann Kelter, Colonel Cold, gaunt in the grey air. Stiffly, tinkling spurs they moved, glassy-eyed with glinting heel, stabbing those who lingered there, torn by screaming steel. Disabled. He sat in a wheeled chair, waiting for dark, and shivered in his ghastly suit of grey, legless, sewn short at elbow. Through the park, voices of boys rang, saddening like a hymn, voices of play and pleasure after day, till gathering sleep had mothered them from him. About this time town used to swing so gay, when glow lamps budded in the light blue trees, and girls glanced lovelier as the air grew dim, in the old times, before he threw away his knees. Now he will never feel again how slim girls' waists are, or how warm their subtle hands. All of them touch him like some queer disease. There was an artist silly for his face, for it was younger than his youth, last year. Now he is old. His back will never brace. He's lost his colour, very far from here. Poured it down shell holes till the veins ran dry, and half his lifetime lapsed in the hot race and leap of purple spurted from his thigh. One time he liked the blood smear down his leg. After the matches, carried shoulder high. It was after football, when he'd drunk a peg, he thought he'd better join. He wonders why. Someone had said he'd look a god in kilts. That's why. And maybe, too, to please his Meg. Aye, that was it. To please the giddy jilts, he asked to join. He didn't have to beg. Smiling, they wrote his lie, aged 19 years. Germans he scarcely thought of. All their guilt, and Austria's, did not move him. And no fears of fear came yet. He thought of jewelled hilts for daggers in plaid socks, of smart salutes, and care of arms and leave and pay arrears, esprit de corps and hints for young recruits. And soon he was drafted out with drums and cheers. Some cheered him home, but not as crowds cheer goal. Only a solemn man who brought him fruits thanked him, and then inquired about his soul. Now he will spend a few sick years in institutes, and do what things the rules consider wise, and take whatever pity they may dole. Tonight he noticed how the women's eyes passed from him to the strong men that were whole. How cold and late it is. Why don't they come and put him into bed? Why don't they come? The General. Good morning, the General said when we met him last week on our way to the line. Now the soldiers he smiled at are most of them dead, and we're cursing his staff for incompetent swine. He's a cheery old card, grunted Harry to Jack, as they slugged up to Arras with rifle and pack. But he did for them both by his plan of attack. After the battle. So they're satisfied with our brigade, and it remains to parcel out the bays. and we shall have the usual thanks parade, the beaming general and the soapy praise. You will come up in your capricious car to find your heroes sulking in the rain, to tell us how magnificent we are, and how you hope we'll do the same again. And we, who knew your old abusive tongue, who heard you hector us a week before, we who have bled to boost you up a rung, a KCB perhaps a corps. We who must mourn those spaces in the mess, and somehow fill those hollows in the heart. We do not want your sermon on success, your greasy benisons on being smart. We only want to take our wounds away, to some warm village where the tumult ends, and drowsing in the sunshine many a day, forget our aches, forget that we had friends. Weary we are of blood and noise and pain. This was a week we shall not soon forget. And if, indeed, we have to fight again, we little wish to think about it yet. We have done well. We like to hear it said. Say it, and then for God's sake say no more. Fight if you must, fresh battles far ahead. But keep them dark behind your chateau door. The Survivor. I found him in Department CO10. 3 rows of medals, DSO, CB. Brown, handsome, fearless. Born to handle men. Brushed, buttoned, spurred. Whom did I wish to see? Men you can't send for, General, I said. How great soever your expensive ink. Men you've forgotten. The unribboned dead, who fell because you were too brave to think. The Fallen Subaltern. The star shells float above. The bayonets glisten. We bear our fallen friend without a sound. Below, the waiting legions lie and listen to us, who march upon their burial ground. Wound in the flag of England, here we lay him. The guns will flash and thunder o'er the grave. What other winding sheet should now array him? What other music should salute the brave? As goes the sun god in his chariot glorious, when all his golden banners are unfurled, so goes the soldier, fallen but victorious, and leaves behind a twilight in the world. And those who come this way in days hereafter will know that here a boy for England fell, who looked at danger with the eyes of laughter, and on the charge his days were ended well. One last salute, the bayonets clash and glisten. The shadowy file goes by without a sound. One more has found the men who lie and listen to us, who march upon their burial ground. Futility. Move him into the sun. Gently its touch awoke him once. At home, whispering of fields half sown. Always it woke him, even in France, until this morning, and this snow. If anything might rouse him now, the kind old sun will know. Think how it wakes the seeds. Woke once the clays of a cold star. Are limbs so dear achieved, are sides full-nerved, still warm, too hard to stir? Was it for this the clay grew tall? Oh, what made fatuous sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all? Outward bound. There's a waterfall I'm leaving, running down the rocks in foam. There's a pool for which I'm grieving, near the water ouzel's home. And it's there that I'd be lying with the heather close at hand, and the curlews faintly crying mid the wastes of Cumberland. While the midnight watch is winging, thoughts of other days arise. I can hear the river singing, like the saints in paradise. I can see the water winking like the merry eyes of Pan, and the slow half-pounder sinking by the bridge's granite span. Ah, to win them back and clamber braced anew with winds I love. From the river's stainless amber to the morning mist above, see through cloud rifts rent asunder, like a painted scroll unfurled, ridge and hollow rolling under to the fringes of the world. Now the weary guard are sleeping, now the great propellers churn, now the harbour lights are creeping into emptiness astern. While the sentry wakes and watches, plunging triangles of light where the water leaps and catches at our escort in the night. Great their happiness who, seeing still with unbenighted eyes kin of theirs who gave them being, sun and earth that made them wise, die and feel their embers quicken year by year in summertime, when the cotton grasses thicken on the hills they used to climb. Shall we also be as they be, mingled with our mother clay, or return no more, it may be? Who has knowledge? Who shall say? Yet we hope that from the bosom of our shaggy father, Pan, when the earth breaks into blossom richer from the dust of man, though the high gods smite and slay us, though we come not whence we go, as the host of Menelaus came there many years ago, yet the selfsame wind shall bear us from the same departing place, out across the gulf of Saros and the peaks of Samothrace. We shall pass in summer weather, we shall come at eventide, when the fells stand up together, and all quiet things abide, mixed with cloud and wind and river, sun-distilled in dew and rain, one with Cumberland for ever. We shall not go forth again. Died of wounds. His wet, white face and miserable eyes brought nurses to him more than groans and sighs. But hoarse and low and rapid rose and fell his troubled voice. He did the business well. The ward grew dark, but he was still complaining and calling out for Dickie. Curse the wood, it's time to go. Oh, Christ, and what's the good? We'll never take it, and it's always raining. I wondered where he'd been. Then heard him shout, They snipe like hell. Oh, Dickie, don't go out. I fell asleep. Next morning he was dead, and some slight wound lay smiling on the bed. The hero. Jack fell as he'd have wished, the mother said, and folded up the letter that she'd read. The Colonel writes so nicely. Something broke in the tired voice that quavered to a choke. She half looked up. We mothers are so proud of our dead soldiers. Then her face was bowed. Quietly the brother officer went out. He'd told the poor old dear some gallant lies that she would nourish all her days, no doubt. For while he coughed and mumbled, her weak eyes had shone with gentle triumph, brimmed with joy, because he'd been so brave, her glorious boy. He thought how Jack, cold-footed, useless swine, had panicked down the trench that night the mine went up at Wicked Corner, how he'd tried to get sent home, and how, at last, he'd died, blown to small bits. And no one seemed to care, except that lonely woman with white hair. Base details. If I were fierce and bald and short of breath, I'd live with scarlet majors at the base and speed glum heroes up the line to death. You'd see me with my puffy, petulant face, guzzling and gulping in the best hotel, reading the roll of honour. Poor young chap, I'd say. I used to know his father well. Yes, we've lost heavily in this last scrap. And when the war is done and youth stone dead, I'd toddle safely home and die, in bed. Suicide in the trenches. I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life in empty joy, slept soundly through the lonesome dark, and whistled early with the lark. In winter trenches, cowed and glum, with crumps and lice and lack of rum, he put a bullet through his brain. No one spoke of him again. You smug-faced crowds with kindling eye, who cheer when soldier lads march by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go. Does it matter? Does it matter? Losing your legs? For people will always be kind, and you need not show that you mind when the others come in after hunting to gobble their muffins and eggs. Does it matter? Losing your sight? There's such splendid work for the blind, and people will always be kind as you sit on the terrace remembering and turning your face to the light. Do they matter? Those dreams from the pit. You can drink and forget and be glad, and people won't say that you're mad, for they'll know that you fought for your country, and no one will worry a bit. Great men. The great ones of the earth approve, with smiles and bland salutes, the rage and monstrous tyranny they have brought to birth. The great ones of the earth are much concerned about the wars they wage, and quite aware of what those wars are worth. You marshals, gilt and red, you ministers and princes and great men, why can't you keep your mouthings for the dead? Go round the simple cemeteries, and then talk of our noble sacrifice and losses to the wooden crosses. From the Ballad of Peace and War. Oh, meet it is, and passing sweet, to live at peace with others, but sweeter still, and far more meet, to die in war for brothers. The soil is safe, for widow and waif, and for the soul of England, because their bodies men vouchsafe to save the soul of England. Anthem for Doomed Youth. What passing bells for these who die as cattle? Only the monstrous anger of the guns. Only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers, no bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill, demented choirs of wailing shells, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. What candles may be held to speed them all? Not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall, their flowers the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk the drawing down of blinds. Dulce et Decorum Est. Bent double, like old beggars on the sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him, drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. 5 souls. I was a peasant of the Polish plain. I left my plough because the message ran, Russia in danger needed every man to save her from the Teuton, and was slain. I gave my life for freedom. This I know, for those who bade me fight had told me so. I was a Tyrolese, a mountaineer. I gladly left my mountain home to fight against the brutal, treacherous Muscovite, and died in Poland on a Cossack spear. I gave my life for freedom. This I know, for those who bade me fight had told me so. I worked in Lyon, at my weaver's loom, when suddenly a Prussian despot hurled his felon blow at France and at the world. Then I went forth to Belgium, and my doom. I gave my life for freedom. This I know, for those who bade me fight had told me so. I owned a vineyard by the wooded main, until the fatherland, begirt by foes lusting her downfall, called me, and I rose swift to the call, and died in far Lorraine. I gave my life for freedom. This I know, for those who bade me fight had told me so. I worked in a great shipyard by the Clyde. There came a sudden word of wars declared, of Belgium, peaceful, helpless, unprepared, asking our aid. I joined the ranks and died. I gave my life for freedom. This I know, for those who bade me fight had told me so. War exalts. War exalts and cleanses. It lifts man from the mud. Ask God what he thinks of a bayonet dripping blood. By war the brave are tested, and cowards are disgraced. Show God his own image shrapnelled into paste. Fight till tyrants perish, slay till brutes are mild. Then go wash the blood off and try to face your child. The shell. Shrieking its message, the flying death cursed the resisting air, then buried its nose by a battered church, a skeleton, gaunt and bare. The brains of science, the money of fools had fashioned an iron slave destined to kill, yet the futile end was a child's uprooted grave. 1916. The world, bloodily minded, the church dead or polluted, the blind leading the blinded, and the deaf dragging the muted. The conscript. Indifferent, flippant, earnest, but all bored. The doctors sit in the glare of electric light, watching the endless stream of naked white bodies of men for whom their hasty award means life or death, maybe, or the living death of mangled limbs, blind eyes, or a darkened brain. And the chairman, as his monocle falls again, pronounces each doom with easy, indifferent breath. And suddenly I shudder as I see a young man stand before them wearily, cadaverous as one already dead. But still they stare, untroubled, as he stands with arms outstretched and drooping thorn-crowned head, the nail marks glowing in his feet and hands. Of the Great White War. During the years when the white men fought each other, I observed how the aged cried aloud in public places of honour and chivalry and the duty of the young, and how the young ceased doing the pleasant things of youth and became suddenly old, and marched away to defend the aged. And I observed how the aged became suddenly young, and mouthed fair phrases one to the other upon the supreme sacrifice, and turned to their account books, murmuring gravely, business as usual, and brought out the bottles of wine, and drank the health of the young men they had sent out to die for them. The modern Abraham. His purple fingers clutch a large cigar, plump, mottled fingers with a ring or two. He rests back in his fat armchair. The war has made this change in him. As he looks through his checkbook with a tragic look, he sighs, "Disabled Soldiers Fund." He reads afresh, and through his meat-red face peer angry eyes, the spirit piercing through its mound of flesh. "They should not ask me to subscribe again. Consider me in all that I have done. I fought for Britain with my might and main. I make explosives, and I gave a son. My factory, converted for the fight, I do not like to boast of what I've spent, now manufactures gas and dynamite, which only pays me 70%. And if I had 10 other sons to send, I'd make them serve my country to the end. So all the neighbours should flock round and say, 'Oh, look what Mr. Abraham has done. He loves his country in the elder way. Poor gentleman, he's lost another son.'" Common form. If any question why we died, tell them, because our fathers lied. dead statesman. I could not dig. I dared not rob. Therefore I lied to please the mob. Now all my lies are proved untrue, and I must face the men I slew. What tale shall serve me here among mine angry and defrauded young? The new trade. In the marketplace, they have made a dolorous new trade. Now you will see in the fierce naphtha light, piled hideously to sight, dead limbs of men bronzed in the overseas, bomb-wrenched from elbows and knees, torn feet that would, unwearied by harsh loads, have tramped steep moorland roads, torn hands that would have moulded exquisitely rare things for God to see. And there are eyes there, blue like blue doves' wings, black like the Libyan kings, grey as before dawn rivers, willow-stirred, brown as a nesting bird, but all stare from the dark into the dark, reproachful, tense and stark. Eyes, heaped on trays and in broad baskets there, feet, hands and ropes of hair, in the marketplaces, and women buy. Naphtha glares, hawkers cry, fat men rub hands. O God, O just God, send plagues, lightnings, make an end. Cannon fodder. Is it 7 days you've been lying there, out in the cold, feeling the damp, chill circlet of flesh loosen its hold on muscles and sinews and bones, feeling them slip one from the other to hang limp on the stones? 7 days. The lice must be busy in your hair, and by now the worms will have had their share of eyelid and lip. Poor, lonely thing. Is death really asleep? Or can you somewhere feel the vermin creep across your face as you lie, rotting, uncared for, in the unowned place that you fought so hard to keep, blow after weakening blow? Well, you've got what you wanted. That spot is yours. No one can take it from you now. But at home, by the fire, their faces aglow with talking of you, they'll be sitting, the folk that you loved, and they will not know. O girl at the window combing your hair, get back to your bed. Your bright-limbed lover is lying out there, dead. O mother, sewing by candlelight, put away that stuff. The clammy fingers of earth are about his neck. He's warm enough. Soon, like a snake in your honest home, the word will come, and the light will suddenly go from it. Day will be dumb, and the heart in each aching breast will be cold and numb. O men who had known his manhood and truth, I had found him true. O you who had loved his laughter and youth, I had loved it too. O girl who has lost the meaning of life, I am lost as you. And yet there is one worse thing. For all the pain at the heart and the eye blurred and dim, this you are spared. You have not seen what death has made of him. You have not seen the proud limbs mangled and broken, the face of the lover sightless and raw and red. You have not seen the flock of vermin swarming over the newly dead. Slowly he'll rot in the place where no man dare go. Silently, over the right the stench of his carcass will flow. Proudly the worms will be banqueting. This you can never know. He will live in your dreams forever, as last you saw him, proud-eyed and clean, a man whose shame never knew, laughing, erect, with the strength of the wind in his manhood. Oh, broken-hearted mother, I envy you. A dirge of victory. Lift not thy trumpet, victory, to the sky, nor through battalions nor by batteries blow, but over hollows full of old wire go, where among dregs of war the long dead lie with wasted iron that the guns passed by when they went eastward like a tide at flow. There blow thy trumpet that the dead may know, who waited for thy coming victory. It is not we that have deserved thy wreath. They waited there among the towering weeds, the deep mud burned under the thermite's breath, and winter cracked the bones that no man heeds. Hundreds of nights flamed by, the seasons passed, and thou hast come to them at last. At last.
The Armistice. The news came through over the telephone. All the terms had been signed. The war was won. And all the fighting and the agony and all the labour of the years were done. One girl clicked sudden at her typewriter and whispered, "Jerry's safe," and sat and stared. One said, "It's over. Over. It's the end. The war is over. Ended." And a third, "I can't remember life without the war." And one came in and said, "Look here, they say we can all go at 5 to celebrate, as long as 2 stay on, just for today." It was quite quiet in the big empty room, among the typewriters and little piles of index cards. One said, "We'd better just finish the day's reports and do the files." And said, "It's awfully like the recessional now when the tumult has all died away." The other said, "Thank God we saw it through. I wonder what they'll do at home today." And said, "You know, it will be quiet tonight up at the front. First time in all these years. And no one will be killed there anymore." And stopped to hide her tears. She said, "I've told you he was killed in June." The other said, "My dear, I know. I know. It's over for me too. My man was killed, wounded, and died at Ypres 3 years ago. And he's my man. And I want him," she said, and knew that peace could not give back her dead.
From any soldier to his son. What did I do, sonny, in the Great World War? Well, I learned to peel potatoes and to scrub the barrack floor. I learned to ride as soldiers ride from Etap to the line, for days and nights in cattle trucks packed in like droves of swine. I learned to sleep by snatches on the fire step of a trench, and to eat my breakfast mixed with mud and Fritz's heavy stench. I learned to pray for blighty ones, and lie and squirm with fear when Germans started strafing and the blighty ones were near. I learned to write home cheerful with my heart a lump of lead with the thought of you and Mother when she heard that I was dead. So I learned to live and lump it in the lovely land of war, where all the face of nature seems a monstrous septic sore, where all the bowels of earth hang open like the guts of something slain, and the rot and wreck of everything are churned and churned again, where all is done in darkness, and where all is still in day, where living men are buried, and the dead unburied lay, where men inhabit holes like rats, and only rats live there, where cottage stood, and castle once in days before la guerre, where endless files of soldiers thread the everlasting way, by endless miles of duckboards, through endless walls of clay, where life is one hard labour, and a soldier gets his rest when they leave him in the daisies with a puncture in his chest, where still a lark in summer pours a warble from the skies, and underneath, unheeding, lie the blank, upstaring eyes. And I read the Blighty papers, where the warriors of the pen tell of Christmas in the trenches, and the spirit of our men. And I saved the choicest morsels, and I read them to my chum, and he muttered, as he cracked a louse and wiped it off his thumb, "May 1,000 chats from Belgium crawl their fingers as they write. May they dream they're not exempted till they faint with mortal fright. May the fattest rats in Dickerbush race over them in bed. May the lies they've written choke them like a gas cloud till they're dead. May the horror and the torture and the things they never tell, for they only write to order, be reserved for them in hell. You'd like to be a soldier and go to France some day? By all the dead in Delville Wood, by all the nights I lay between our line and Fritz's before they brought me in, by this old wood and leather stump that once was flesh and skin, by all the lads who crossed with me but never crossed again, by all the prayers their mothers and their sweethearts prayed in vain, before the things that were that day should evermore befall, may God, in common pity, destroy us, one and all. Armistice Day, 1921. The hush begins. Nothing is heard, save the arrested taxis throbbing, and here and there an ignorant bird, and here a sentimental woman sobbing. The statesman bears and bows his head before the solemn monument. His lips, paying duty to the dead in silence, are more than ever eloquent. But ere the sacred silence breaks, and taxis hurry on again, a faint and distant voice awakes, speaking the mind of 1,000,000 absent men. Mourn not for us. Our better luck at least has given us peace and rest. We struggled when our moment struck, but now we understand that death knew best. Would we be as our brothers are, whose barrel organs charm the town? Ours was a better dodge by far. We got our pensions in a lump sum down. We, out of all, have had our pay. There is no poverty where we lie. The graveyard has no quarter day. The space is narrow, but the rent not high. No empty stomach here is found, unless some cheated worm complain. You hear no grumbling underground. Oh, never, never wish us back again. Mourn not for us, but rather we will meet upon this solemn day, and in our greater liberty keep silent for you a little while, and pray. The farmer remembers the psalm. Will they never fade or pass? The mud and the misty figures endlessly coming in file through the foul morass, and the grey floodwater upping the reeds and grass, and the steel wings drumming. The hills are bright in the sun. There's nothing changed or marred in the well-known places. When work for the day is done, there's talk and quiet laughter and gleams of fun on the old folks' faces. I have returned to these, the farm and kindly bush, and the young calves lowing. But all that my mind sees is a quaking bog in a mist stark snapped trees, and the dark Somme flowing. The sun. I found the letter in a cardboard box. Unfamous history. I read the words. The ink was frail and brown, the paper dry after so many years of being kept. The letter was a soldier's. From the front conveyed his love and disappointed hope of getting leave. It's cancelled now, he wrote. My luck is at the bottom of the sea. Outside the sun was hot. The world looked bright. I heard a radio, and someone laughed. I did not sing, or laugh, or love the sun. Within the quiet room I thought of him. My father killed, and all the other men whose luck was at the bottom of the sea. War. Over the world rages war. Earth, sea and sky wince at his roar. He tramples down at every tread, 1,000,000 men, 1,000,000 dead. We say that we must crush the Hun, or else the world will be undone. But Huns are we as much as they. All men are Huns, who fight and slay. And if we win and crush the Huns, in 20 years we must fight their sons. Who will rise against our victory? Their fathers, their own ignominy. And if their Kaiser we dethrone, they will his son restore, or some other one. If we win by war, war is a force, and others to war will have recourse. And through the world will rage new war. Earth, sea and sky will wince at his roar. He will trample down at every tread, millions of men, millions of dead. Days drawing in. The days fail. Night broods over afternoon. And at my child's first drink beyond the night, her skin is silver in the early light. Sweet, the grey morning, and the raiders gone.
Autumn Blitz. Unshaken world. Another day of light after the human chaos of the night. Although a heart in mendless horror grieves, what calmly yellow, gently falling leaves?
Night raid. The sleepers humped down on the benches. The daft boy was playing rummy with anyone he could get. And the dancing girl said, "What I say is, if there's a bomb made for you, you're going to get it." Someone muttered, "The bees are coming again." Someone whispered beside me in the darkness, "They're coming up from the east." Way off, the guns muttered distantly. This was in the small hours, at the ebb, and the dancing girl clicked her teeth like castanets and said, "I don't mind life, believe me. I like it. If there's any more to come, I can take it and be glad of it." She was shivering and laughing and throwing her head back. On the pavement, men looked up thoughtfully, making plausible conjectures. The night sky throbbed under the cool bandage of the searchlights.
The Evacuee. She woke up under a loose quilt of leaf patterns, woven by the light at the small window, busy with the boughs of a young cherry, but wearily she lay, waiting for the siren, slow to trust nature's deceptive peace, and then afraid of the long silence. She would have crept uneasily from the bedroom with its frieze of fresh sunlight, had not a cock crowed, shattering the surface of that limpid pool of stillness. And before the ripples died one by one in the field shallows, the farm woke with uninhibited din. And now the noise and not the silence drew her down the bare stairs at great speed. The sounds and voices were a rough sheet waiting to catch her, as though she leapt from a scorched story of the charred past. And there the table and the gallery of farm faces trying to be kind beckoned her nearer, and she sat down under an awning of salt hams. And so she grew, a small bird in the nest of welcome that was built about her. Home now, after so long away in the flowerless streets of the drab town. The men watched her busy with the hens, the soft flesh ripening warm as corn on the sticks of limbs, the grey eyes clear, rinsed with the dew of their long dread. The men watched her, and, nodding, smiled with earth's charity, patient and strong.
Mother and son. He sees his comrades, and a coming test in which he hopes to shine, not yet perceiving how mud may soil a fallen Hector's crest, and Priam's palace echo with girls grieving. She only sees her son, her life's one star, the leaping little lad of days that were, somewhere alone amid the wreck of war, crying for help from her, and she not there. Route march rest. They marched in staggered columns through the lanes, drowsy with dust and summer, rifles slung. All other ranks wore helmets, and the sun drummed on bobbing metal plates and purred inside their skulls. A thumping tramp of boots on gravel crunched. B Company had become a long machine that clanked and throbbed. The reek of leather, sweat, and rifle oil was thick and khaki on the body of the day. All dainty fragrances were shouldered out, though thrush and blackbird song could not be stilled, and teased some favoured regions of the air. They reached a village, and the order came to halt and fall out for a rest. The men unslung their rifles, lit up cigarettes, and sprawled or squatted on the village green. Opposite the green, next to the church, the school, whose open windows with wild flowers and glass jars on the sills framed pools of dark, was silent, cool. But from the playground sprayed the calls of children, bright as buttercups, until a handbell called them in from play, and then B Company was ordered back to fall in on the road in their platoons and start the march again. Beyond the church they passed a marble plinth and saw the roll of names, too many surely for this small community. And as the files trudged on, faintly from the school, like breath of flowers but half remembered, children's voices rose. All things bright and beautiful, they sang. Frail sound, already fading, soon to die. All day it has rained. All day it has rained. And we, on the edge of the moors, have sprawled in our bell tents, moody and dull as boors. Ground sheets and blankets spread on the muddy ground, and from the first grey wakening we have found no refuge from the skirmishing fine rain and the wind that made the canvas heave and flap, and the taut wet guy ropes ravel out and snap. All day the rain has glided, wave and mist and dream, drenching the gorse and heather, a gossamer stream too light to stir the acorns that suddenly snatched from their cups by the wild southwesterly pattered against the tent and our upturned dreaming faces. Then we stretched out, unbuttoning our braces, smoking a woodbine, darning dirty socks, reading the Sunday papers. I saw a fox and mentioned it in the note I scribbled home. And we talked of girls and dropping bombs on Rome, and thought of the quiet dead and the loud celebrities exhorting us to slaughter, and the herded refugees, yet thought softly, morosely of them, and as indifferently as of ourselves, or those whom we for years have loved, and will again, tomorrow maybe love. But now it is the rain possesses us entirely, a twilight in the rain. And I can remember nothing dearer or more to my heart than the children I watched in the woods on Saturday, shaking down burning chestnuts for the schoolyard's merry play, or the shaggy patient dog who followed me by sheet and steep and up the wooded scree to the shoulder of mutton, where Edward Thomas brooded long on death and beauty, till a bullet stopped his song. Vergiss mich nicht. 3 weeks gone, and the combatants gone, returning over the nightmare ground. We found the place again, and found the soldier sprawling in the sun, the frowning barrel of his gun overshadowing. As we came on that day, he hit my tank with one like the entry of a demon. Look, here in the gun pit spoil the dishonoured picture of his girl, who has put Steffi, vergiss mich nicht, in a copybook Gothic script. We see him, almost with content, abased, and seeming to have paid and mocked at by his own equipment that's hard and good when he's decayed. But she would weep to see today how on his skin the swart flies move, the dust upon the paper eye, and the burst stomach like a cave. For here a lover and killer are mingled, who had one body and one heart, and death, who had the soldiers singled, has done the lover mortal hurt. The battle. Helmet and rifle, pack and overcoat march through a forest. Somewhere up ahead, guns thudded. Like the circle of a throat, the night on every side was turning red. They halted, and they dug. They sank like moles into the clammy earth between the trees. And soon the sentries, standing in their holes, felt the first snow. Their feet began to freeze. At dawn, the first shell landed with a crack. Then shells and bullets swept the icy woods. This lasted many days. The snow was black. The corpses stiffened in their scarlet hoods. Most clearly of that battle, I remember the tiredness in eyes, how hands looked thin around a cigarette, and the bright ember would pulse with all the life there was within. Lessons of the War. 1. Naming of parts. Today we have naming of parts. Yesterday we had daily cleaning. And tomorrow morning we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of parts. Japonica glistens like coral in all of the neighbouring gardens. And today we have naming of parts. This is the lower sling swivel. And this is the upper sling swivel, whose use you will see when you are given your slings. And this is the piling swivel, which in your case you have not got. The branches hold in the gardens their silent, eloquent gestures, which in our case we have not got. This is the safety catch, which is always released with an easy click of the thumb. And please do not let me see anyone using his finger. You can do it quite easy if you have any strength in your thumb. The blossoms are fragile and motionless, never letting anyone see any of them using their finger. And this, you can see, is the bolt. The purpose of this is to open the breech, as you see. We can slide it rapidly backwards and forwards. We call this easing the spring. And rapidly backwards and forwards the early bees are assaulting and fumbling the flowers. They call it easing the spring. They call it easing the spring. It is perfectly easy if you have any strength in your thumb, like the bolt and the breech and the cocking piece, and the point of balance, which in our case we have not got. And the almond blossom, silent in all of the gardens, and the bees going backwards and forwards. For today we have naming of parts. 2. Judging distances. Not only how far away, but the way that you say it is very important. Perhaps you may never get the knack of judging a distance, but at least you know how to report on a landscape. The central sector, the right of arc, and that which we had last Tuesday, and at least you know that maps are of time, not place, so far as the army happens to be concerned, the reason being is one which need not delay us. Again, you know there are 3 kinds of tree, 3 only, the fir and the poplar, and those which have bushy tops too, and lastly that things only seem to be things. A barn is not called a barn. To put it more plainly, or a field in the distance where sheep may be safely grazing, you must never be oversure. You must say, when reporting, at 5 o'clock in the central sector is a dozen of what appear to be animals. Whatever you do, don't call the bleeders sheep. I'm sure that's quite clear, and suppose, for the sake of example, the one at the end, asleep, endeavours to tell us what he sees over there to the west, and how far away, after first having come to attention. There to the west, on the field of summer, the sun and the shadows bestow vestments of purple and gold. The still white dwellings are like a mirage in the heat, and under the swaying elms, a man and a woman lie gently together. Which is, perhaps, only to say that there is a row of houses to the left of the arc, and that under some poplars a pair of what appear to be humans appear to be loving. Well, that, for an answer, is what we might rightly call moderately satisfactory only. The reason being is that 2 things have been omitted, and those are important. The human beings now, in what direction are they, and how far away, would you say? And do not forget, there may be dead ground in between. There may be dead ground in between, and I may not have got the knack of judging a distance. I will only venture a guess that perhaps between me and the apparent lovers, who incidentally appear by now to have finished, at 7 o'clock from their houses, is roughly a distance of about 1 year and a half. A lullaby. For wars, his life, and half a world away, the soldier sells his family in days. He learns to fight for freedom and the state. He sleeps with 7 men within 6 feet. He picks up matches, and he cleans out plates, is lied to like a child, cursed like a beast. They crop his head. His dog tags ring like sheep, as his stiff limbs shift wearily to sleep. Recalled in dreams or letters, else forgot, his life is smothered like a grave with dirt, and his dull torment mottles like a fly's, the lying amber of the histories. Relative sadness. Einstein's eyes were filled with tears when he heard about Hiroshima. Mr. Tamihi had no eyes left to show his grief. For the Union dead. The old South Boston Aquarium stands in a Sahara of snow now. Its broken windows are boarded. The bronze weather vane cod has lost half its scales. The airy tanks are dry. Once, my nose crawled like a snail on the glass. My hand tingled to burst the bubbles drifting from the noses of the cowed, compliant fish. My hand draws back. I often sigh still for the dark downward and vegetating kingdom of the fish and reptile. One morning last March, I pressed against the new barbed and galvanized fence on the Boston Common. Behind their cage, yellow dinosaur steam shovels were grunting as they cropped up tons of mush and grass to gouge their underworld garage. Parking spaces luxuriate like civic sand piles in the heart of Boston. A girdle of orange, Puritan pumpkin-coloured girders braces the tingling State House, shaking over the excavations, as it faces Colonel Shaw and his bell-checked Negro infantry on St. Gordon's shaking Civil War relief, propped by a plank splint against the garage's earthquake. 2 months after marching through Boston, half the regiment was dead. At the dedication, William James could almost hear the bronze Negroes breathe. Their monument sticks like a fishbone in the city's throat. Its colonel is as lean as a compass needle. He has an angry wren-like vigilance, a greyhound's gentle tautness. He seems to wince at pleasure and suffocate for privacy. He is out of bounds now. He rejoices in man's lovely peculiar power to choose life and die. When he leads his black soldiers to death, he cannot bend his back. On 1,000 small-town New England greens, the old white churches hold their air of sparse, sincere rebellion. Frayed flags quilt the graveyards of the Grand Army of the Republic. The stone statues of the abstract Union soldier grow slimmer and younger each year. Wasp-waisted, they doze over muskets and muse through their sideburns. Shaw's father wanted no monument except the ditch, where his son's body was thrown and lost with his niggers. The ditch is nearer. There are no statues for the last war here. On Boylston Street, a commercial photograph shows Hiroshima boiling over a Moseless safe, the rock of ages that survived the blast. Space is nearer. When I crouch to my television set, the drained faces of Negro schoolchildren rise like balloons. Colonel Shaw is riding on his bubble. He waits for the blessed break. The aquarium is gone. Everywhere, giant finned cars nose forward like fish. A savage servility slides by on grease. The horses. Barely a 12-month after the 7 days' war that put the world to sleep, late in the evening, the strange horses came. By then we had made our covenant with silence. But in the first few days it was so still, we listened to our breathing and were afraid. On the second day the radios failed. We turned the knobs. No answer. On the third day a warship passed us, heading north. Dead bodies piled on the deck. On the 6th day a plane plunged over us into the sea. Thereafter nothing. The radio's dumb. And still they stand in corners of our kitchens, and stand, perhaps, turned on in a million rooms all over the world. But now, if they should speak, if on a sudden they should speak again, if on the stroke of noon a voice should speak, we would not listen. We would not let it bring that bad old world that swallowed its children quick at one great gulp. We would not have it again. Sometimes we think of the nations lying asleep, curled blindly in impenetrable sorrow, and then the thought confounds us with its strangeness. The tractors lie about our fields. At evening they look like dank sea monsters crouched and waiting. We leave them where they are and let them rust. They'll moulder away and be like other loam. We make our oxen drag our rusty ploughs, long laid aside. We have gone back, far past our father's land. And then, that evening, late in the summer, the strange horses came. We heard a distant tapping on the road, a deepening drumming. It stopped, went on again, and at the corner changed to hollow thunder. We saw the heads like a wild wave charging and were afraid. We had sold our horses in our father's time to buy new tractors. Now they were strange to us, as fabulous steeds set on an ancient shield or illustrations in a book of knights. We did not dare go near them. Yet they waited, stubborn and shy, as if they had been sent by an old command to find our whereabouts and that long-lost archaic companionship. In the first moment we had never thought that they were creatures to be owned and used. Among them were some half a dozen colts dropped in some wilderness of the broken world, yet new, as if they had come from their own Eden. Since then they have pulled our ploughs and borne our loads, but that free servitude still can pierce our hearts. Our life is changed. Their coming, our beginning. Appendix 4. Requirements in the shelter. Clothing, cooking equipment, food, furniture, hygiene, lighting, medical, shrouds. What? Shrouds. Several large, strong black plastic bags, and a reel of 2-inch or wider adhesive tape can make adequate airtight containers for deceased persons until the situation permits burial. No, I will not put my lovely wife into a large, strong, black plastic bag. No, I will not put my lovely children into large, strong, black plastic bags. No, I will not put my lovely dog or my lovely cats into large, strong, black plastic bags. I will embrace them all until I am filled with their radiation. Then I will carry them, one by one, through the black landscape, and lay them gently at the concrete door of the concrete block where the colonels and the chief detectives and the MPs and the regional commissioners are biding their time. And then I will lie down with my wife and children and my dog and cats, and we will wait for the door to open. Icarus All Sorts. A meteorite is reported to have landed in New England. No damage is said. A little bit of heaven fell from out the sky one day. It landed in the ocean not so very far away. The general at the radar screen rubbed his hands with glee and, grinning, pressed the button that started World War III. From every corner of the earth, bombs began to fly. There were even missile jams. No traffic lights in the sky. In the time it takes to blow your nose, the people fell. The mushrooms rose. "House!" cried the fat lady as the bingo hall moved to various parts of the town. "Raus!" cried the German butcher as his shop came tumbling down. Philip was in the counting house, counting out his money. The Queen was in her parlour, eating bread and honey, when through the window flew a bomb, and made them go all funny. In the time it takes to draw a breath, or eat a toadstool, instant death. The rich huddled outside the doors of their fallout shelters like drunken carol singers, the poor clutching shattered televisions and last week's editions of TV Times, but the very last. Civil defence volunteers, with their tin hats in one hand and their heads in the other. CND supporters, their ban the bomb badges beginning to rust, have scrawled, "I told you so," in the dust. A little bit of heaven fell from out the sky one day. It landed in Vermont, northeastern USA. The general at the radar screen, he should have got the sack. But that wouldn't bring 3,000,768 people back, would it?